Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today. This is your primetime destination. News, newsmakers, talking points, and as always, there's plenty that we have for you on the show tonight. At the start of the week, Monday night, our big talking point is coming from the United States, where Donald Trump's H1B crackdown. How should India be responding? Is there an opportunity for India in a potential crisis? That's the question that we'll raise. We'll have experts joining us both from Silicon Valley and from here in India. Also on the show, former Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, in an exclusive interview on that big question. Are we heading to a society where law is being reversed of jail, not bail? What about the law of sedition and the Justice Verma cash at the door of the judge case? Plenty that we'll talk with the former Chief Justice. Let's turn to the story that's breaking right at the very top. High-level dialogue has resumed between India and the United States. That's right. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is in New York at the moment on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly Summit. He's just met his counterpart, Marco Rubio, in New York, and Piyush Goyal, the Commerce Minister, is also in Washington at the moment, hoping to resume the stalled trade negotiations with Washington. So, two major ministers in the Modi government are now in Washington and New York trying to get the Indo-US relationship back on track. Let me go straight across to Rohit Sharma and Karishma Asudani. They join me from Washington and New Delhi. First to you, Rohit. Are we seeing in this autumn air some signs of maybe a breakthrough? The fact that these high-level talks are taking place, are they designed to get the trade talks back on track despite all that has happened over the last 2 months, the tariffs as well as H1B visas?
Well, look, first things first, Rajdeep, yes, we saw there was a delegation in India on September 16th. They issued a statement, the Indian side, saying there would be expedited talks. And now we have Piyush Goyal, who is in Washington, D.C., and he's scheduled to meet with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. So, yes, there is some kind of, urgency in getting this deal done. So we'll probably hear more on that from Piyush Goyal and possibly from the U.S. side as well in this week. Also, the fact that Jaishankar is in New York at UNGA and he's meeting with Secretary Rubio kind of tells you that the relationship is in repair mode right now amid everything else that's going on. And look, they've always said this, that there are multiple facets to this relationship, right? And you cannot hold the relationship hostage to just one issue. So I think we are seeing that play out here in Washington, D.C. and in New York. And given the circumstances, especially the relationship between both the leaders, the gestures that we've seen from US President Donald Trump towards Prime Minister Narendra Modi, I think it is going to be a very interesting week. And by the end of the week, we could actually get a sense of where the relationship is headed and a reality check on what it means for India.
Okay, let me bring in Karishma Asudani at this moment. Karishma, what are you picking up? Piyush Goyal now in Washington. Are we to understand this means that the trade talks will kickstart sooner rather than later?
Rajdeep, that's the hope, that's the expectation, I'd say, from the power corridors of India, especially that this conversation is coming after a really long time. Piyush Goyal last time was in Washington in the month of May, and that was just before the conversations or the negotiations between Washington and Delhi were paused. So this definitely gives us a ray of hope, and especially all of this coming in the shadow of what happened in the last 48 hours with the Trump administration making a series of announcements, especially on the H1B visa. To get you numbers, in fact, about close to 1 lakh crore of market cap of the IT stocks was wiped out, and I'm sure that this will also be taken up in the conversations, and negotiations are the need of the hour. So this definitely gives us a ray of hope for the 6th round of negotiation and a mutually agreed bilateral trade agreement that could come in well within this year.
Interesting, Karishma Asudani, Rohit Sharma. Some signs, some rays of hope that we will actually possibly have a bilateral trade agreement. The deadline now being said is November, but there are still major irritants. I appreciate you joining us, and I'm going to turn to one of those major irritants. Irritants in terms of just the optics of it, more than some would say the substance. Because remember, just 2 days ago, the US President Donald Trump appeared to crack down on H1B visas. H1B visas that have allowed several Indians to travel and work in America. Now, while the White House has clarified that this does not apply to existing H1B visa holders, there is still concern that going ahead in the future, this could affect the lives of several Indians who at one stage chased the American dream. The question is there an opportunity for India amidst this seeming crisis? That's going to be our focus. First, take a look at this report.
This will ensure that the people they're bringing in are actually very highly skilled and that they're not replaceable by American workers.
The country.
2 days after US President Donald Trump imposed $100,000 fees for H1B visas, now there is clarity. The fees is one time, not annual. It applies only to new applicants, not renewals. Current H1B holders won't be charged to re-enter the country. The initial panic is over, with current H1B visa holders protected, but the high fee puts a cloud on chances of new job aspirants. India is the biggest beneficiary of H1B visas. The country accounts for more than 70% of the visas issued under this segment. Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, the two states in India that send a large number of engineers abroad, are worried.
In this situation, where the panic is being created among many professionals over there, I mean mid-sized and small-sized companies over there, who goes for the H1B visa applications will be most affected. And absolutely, I see it's a failure by our Indian government too.
We are today one of the world's most powerful democracies, largest democracy with over 140 crore people. So as the Honorable Prime Minister had said, it is time for us to stand up and become totally self-reliant and ensure that the youth of this country get their livelihood, get good jobs within the country by bringing in investments, by developing industry, by developing various sectors.
Trump's H1B crackdown poses a challenge for India, as it will dry up American jobs and possibly remittances. Some experts see a silver lining.
I see this as a blessing in disguise. I think we must thank President Trump for that. As a country, we have several important, very interesting emerging technologies that have come up. We have several missions now. We must see this as an advantage. We must take full advantage of this.
All eyes are on America's big tech companies. Business analysts expect them to send a sizable number of jobs offshore. But even that is under threat. Republican Senator Bernie Moreno has introduced the Hired Act 2025 that proposes 25% on firms outsourcing services. The big question is, how can India mitigate the impact of Trump's visa crackdown? With Apurva Jayachandran, Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, that sets the stage for today's big talking point, and our talking point is simply this. How should India respond to Donald Trump's H1B crackdown? Is there an opportunity for India in this crisis? Will big tech now send jobs offshore? AI plus H1B curbs. Are we going to see more job cuts? Is that the real concern? And how does India weather the H1B storm, as it's been called in some part? Joining me now, TV Mohandas Pai, Chairman, Arvind Capital. Pravir Jha, he's founder and CEO at Pravir Jha People Advisory, worked at top level at HR in several companies. Shankar Iyer, political economy analyst and columnist author, joins me. And I'm also joined by first guest, Sophie Alcorn, is Silicon Valley-based immigration lawyer. I want to come to you, Sophie, because you can tell us the very latest. 2 days after Donald Trump threatened to disrupt the entire H1B visa, is there complete clarity that H1B visas this $100,000 will only operate for those who have, for fresh petitions. No one who's living in the US or renewing his visa will either have to pay an annual fee or will in any way be troubled by this new directive. Is that very clear now?
No, it is not very clear at all, unfortunately. Only 3 days later, so many questions remain, more questions than answers. It's clear that renewals will not be affected. It's clear that next year's H-1B visa lottery process will be affected. But there are so many gray areas regarding all of the flavors and variations of various types of H-1B petitions that could be filed in the interim. So we are waiting for new guidance. USCIS just released new guidance on their website, talking about more changes that might be coming in the next months through the regulatory process and other mechanisms. And they are emphasizing that they want the H-1B program to be used to only hire the best temporary foreign workers, in their words, in this latest release.
I've also seen in the latest note that's come from the US administration, doctors could be potentially excluded. That are we saying that if I'm an Indian doctor looking to go to America, I could get some benefits of exclusion? Is that all still work in progress? Is there any clarity in that regard?
It's completely a work in process. That is a wonderful question. There is something called a national interest exception in this proclamation, and we are awaiting more details. We've seen national interest waivers in the past when it comes to the EB2 national interest waiver green card process, or in COVID during the travel ban, there was also a national interest exception. We are waiting for details, but what the proclamation makes clear is that the president or the administration or US Citizenship and Immigration Services or the State Department, they can determine if a particular industry is in the national interest, if a particular company or job classification or worker is in the national interest. So this is also an area where we're waiting for more guidance. We don't know what that process is going to be. We also don't even know how somebody applying for a new H-1B to work at a hospital next week would have their employer either pay the $100,000 fee or request this national interest exception fee waiver. So as business has just opened on Monday morning here in the United States, agencies, government institutions, companies, employers, workers are still scrambling to try to pick up what's the latest, what does this mean, how is it going to be implemented, and how does it affect me?
But there are legal challenges already in place to challenge whether the president can issue such executive orders. So that's another X factor, isn't it?
Absolutely. There are a number of lawsuits that have been furiously worked on the entire weekend, with attorneys probably getting no sleep since Friday. And we expect that as the plaintiffs are coming together for those lawsuits, that many will be filed this week in various district courts, representing various groups of employers and H-1B workers. And if a judge decided in any one of those lawsuits that there was a legal basis to issue a temporary restraining order, that could immediately freeze this entire proclamation from Friday and its application until further notice through the litigation process. And then the regulatory process would have to adapt to that based on what's going on through the court system. So there is no certainty here. There are only more and more questions.
Okay, more and more questions, as you said, a lot of uncertainty. As someone said, uncertainty has become the biggest tariff in the world we live in. Sophie Alcorn, for joining me there from Silicon Valley. Appreciate your joining us and explaining what the mood there is. Which brings me to my guest here in India. And Mohandas, I pick up from what Sophie Alcorn said. I saw a column that you've written in today's Times of India where you've suggested there's a huge opportunity. You almost suggest, don't worry, there's nothing to worry about. This is actually an opportunity for India and Indian governments to invest big in AI and deep tech and actually benefit from the fact that many engineers who otherwise would have gone to America may now stay on in India. Are you being excessively optimistic, Mr. Pai?
Rajdeep, I'm being realistically optimistic looking at data as usual. Please remember, there is no implication for this year. It is for the next year. There's an existing stock of H1B, point number one. Point number two, Indian companies have been reducing their reliance on H1B. They got 55, 65% of staff in the US who are locals. And the very important point, if you read the MIT report on the use of AI in global enterprises, very few global enterprises have actually used AI to transform their business. Nothing much has happened. And the only people who can make it happen for them on the global scale are the IT service companies, the global top 10. And for them, this will be a big, big boost to their business. And it's going to come in the next maybe 1 year, 1.5 years. That's what people are talking. And now it will be done offshore. Please remember, during COVID, work went on fully offshore. Nobody traveled. And then we had the GCCs come here as a wave because the CTOs in the US found that they don't need people sitting in front of them to do critical work. They can be anywhere. And if you are in Dallas and you are Dallas working and you got a CTO in New York, it doesn't matter. And whether you are in Bangalore or Dallas, right? So they have shifted a lot of the work and the critical work is being done here. So more work will move offshore. Projects 90-95% will move offshore. And that will be good news because enterprises want this kind of a transformation. Are people going to pay that $100,000? We don't know. We have to wait 6-8 months for them to understand how the new business model will work, what is needed, what is the gap, etc. And then they'll decide. As of now, I think is that something they're all working on. And I think there'll be more work coming this side for very many reasons. As for people going there, Rajdeep, I just want to point out, look, the top 20 companies pay more than $100,000 to the staff. All right. And the cost to them for the travel up and down and their medical insurance and everything else is about $120,000, $125,000. And they charge their clients for the project work $150,000 to $200,000. So these are not cheap workers. They're not cheap workers for the top 20, 25 companies who get the substantial part of the visas. And there are some body shops who get a few visas who may be doing cheap things and not very cheap. So this whole idea that people are coming, replacing local labor, losing jobs, doesn't hold water because the cost is very high for getting somebody from outside. It's just the sheer unavailability of talent for enterprises and many of the tech companies. For example, for Microsoft and others, the cost doesn't matter. The cost doesn't matter. If they get people in America, they'll hire people in America. And all of them have got huge number of people here. In India, the GCs have got 1.9 million. They've got highly trained staff. They may want an expert to go from here and work in Microsoft for 2 years. They'll be probably paying him $250,000, $300,000. So I think the whole thing has changed in the last 5 to 7 years. So we have to wait and see what is the actual impact. And I think, we're not going to see much impact in the next 6 to 12 months.
We're not going to see impact in since you mentioned data, I want to throw data and get you, Praveer Jha, to respond because you've been tracking the HR sector in this country, just global layoffs in the IT sector. Over 1 lakh jobs were cut across the world in 2025. Intel announced 25,000 job cuts, 25% of their total workforce. Microsoft cut 9,000 jobs, 4% of its global workforce. TCS has cut over 12,000 jobs. Top 5 Indian IT companies added only 4,787 employees in Q1. So this is coming at a difficult time for the IT sector. Let's be very clear. Here is Mohandas Pai optimistically realistic that the glass is half full. But there are concerns. This couldn't have come at a more difficult time in a way for the IT sector as well.
Yes, Rajdeep, but I do tend to agree a lot with what Mohan already has said, because directionally, I don't think it's gloom and doom for sure. What's really happening is it's actually a rebalancing and a reconfiguration of the industry. And, sometimes we get taken away just by sheer numbers and headlines that the media reports, right? It's not as gloom and doom. I think it's that stage and phase where it's getting rebalanced. See, what is happening actually is there's a qualitative shift in the kind of jobs that are getting created and jobs that are getting decimated. And we have to understand that. And this context of H1B also, because you were talking about implications for India. One, I do share the optimism that Mohan talked about the GCC reality actually getting bigger. because there is a value, and it is not just IT jobs. GCCs in India are actually doing jobs across functions. So I think it's a very, very positive thing, and I don't think that's going to come down. What is very interesting for us, however, I mean, so all the positives that Mohan said, I agree with. I just want to call out that this reality is showing us a little bit of the underbelly that the Indian education system, or maybe the Indian IT system actually is revealing. There is no doubt that top end Indian talent will continue to be accommodated, whether it's $10,000, $100,000, $50,000. Good talent will always have someone who's going to be willing to pay for you. But one of the things that we have to realize is that the huge army of Indian IT workers who were there are not qualitatively all at the same level. And I think this churn, while it creates an opportunity for India, either through their rebadging as an offshore worker, or coming back and working in entrepreneurial or any other quasi opportunities, the truth is that our quality of education and the quality of the cutting edge skill, that I think needs to be put under a microscope. And this crisis, I think, will do that. And this entire mindset shift from volumes and pairs of hands and numbers of people, which attracts attention, right, will shift to actually more value adding skills. So I think there is also going to be a fair bit of churn in the way the dispersion of the IT talent is going to kind of be looked at over the next few months.
But you see, the question, Shankar here, I repeat it. All of this comes at a time when the country has gone through major, or is going through a major churning in the nature of jobs. Thousands of people have gone to America over the years with the American dream. Not all of them were super skilled. The super skilled workers may well get protected, but there are many others who are struggling both domestically because of cuts that are taking place in the job market, particularly with AI coming into doing many jobs, as well as now the H1B concerns. Do you believe, therefore, that the optimism being shown by Mohandas Pai and to some extent by Probir is justified? Even in AI, we are well behind the curve. Most people believe, for example, on deep tech and AI, we are well behind, for example, the Chinese, who've leapfrogged in many ways. Mohan is, of course, shaking his head, but let Shankar respond, and then I'll come to you, Mohan.
Well, I'm acquainted with doubts, so let me place a couple of things on the plate here. India's competitive edge in technology, hardware, IT was flagged in 1964. And then what we did after that is known. It is just the 1991 crisis and the Y2K which enabled India to brand itself as a tech giant, just as Sony did it for Japan. So I am not as sanguine about this because I have, let's put it, more skepticism about the ability of governments in India to leverage any opportunity that arises from a crisis. The crisis has to be full blown for the opportunity to be leveraged. Let's look at what Trump is doing. It's not a mindless game. I mean, he might send you a tweet wishing you a birthday and all. That doesn't mean diddly squat. Okay. What is Trump doing? Trump is attacking your political model and your business model by attacking by imposing this fee, which is basically a tariff, which is basically a tax on Indian companies or an Indian individual, whichever. You are imposing a cost. And that cost is affecting which state? Your own report now pointed out, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Now, there is a sliver of politics there you should sort of recognize. The second is he's attacking the business model of Indian IT sector. What he doesn't know is a large part of these H1B visa volumes, as Probir put out, will probably get eliminated as AI takes over. I mean, a large number of the companies, Amazon, Google, and all, almost 40-45% of the coding is being done by AI. A large part of consultancies are dropping out youngsters. The biggest problem in the US is around 800,000 college graduates at the entry level don't have jobs. And those are the questions that Trump is sort of trying to talk to his base. Now, what can India do? It has to figure out how it can expand the GCC. It has to figure out how it must not do what it did in the 16s and 70s and 80s by imposing all kinds of nonsensical taxes and compliances. I mean, we were supposed to be the startup capital, and then we had the angel tax, and then Mohan had to run around the whole world to get it deleted. So these kind of things we should avoid. Global capacity centers is a huge opportunity. How do you make it work? And the other thing is that while we sort of look at the overseas opportunity, what do we need to do to create the Indian opportunity? What is the extent of computerization in India? What is the extent of robotization in India? What is the extent of use of AI in government? All of these are creating opportunities. And finally, let me leave you with a thought. Maybe you should call Sundar Pichai, Satya Nadella, Shantanu, and all those people who went on a H1B visa route and have now are running major corporations, and ask them, okay, how do we do a jugaad on this guy? Because Trump is not a normal politician.
Right. You know, given what I've just heard from Shankar Iyer, Mohandas Pai, you were shaking your head when I mentioned about the nature of Chinese investments, for example, in deep tech and AI. You seem to believe that we're still very much in that race. Speaking to many people across borders in the United States and here, you get a sense that India is still playing catch up. Unless Indian companies and government, you yourself mentioned the government needs to get its act together. It seems to be almost that you believe overnight this is going to happen. We are still already several steps behind the countries like China on critical issues which will shape the future.
Rajdeep, let me explain about AI again. There are multiple levels of AI. There is the large learning model, which is dominated by only two countries in the world, the United States, which has got 5 or 6 big companies, and China with DeepSeek, all right? And that is a subscription model used by enterprises and used by individuals like you and me to do some work. The total revenue available to the American company is about $30 billion. Now, how do enterprises use AI? Enterprises cannot use ChatGPT and say, hey, ChatGPT, do this work for me. It doesn't work that way. Enterprises run very large, complex systems. That's what the MIT study says. For them to use AI differently in the large, complex system, they need service providers to work with them and write the code or change the code and make it work, monitor it, and make sure they're safe. That is a huge opportunity, and that's going to give them productivity of 20, 30, 40% and release a lot of dollars. Now, China cannot do that globally. China is not attuned with the West. The only country that can do that will be India. Even all global companies like Accenture.
No, but Mr. Pai, would you concede our IT sector model has largely, many believe, been exploitative? We haven't done the high skill.
That's rubbish.
We need to
move
from a more exploitative model of IT to a high skilled model now.
That's total rubbish. That's total rubbish. Please, you don't act like a leftist out there abusing people and calling them. This industry is $235 billion exports. It's the biggest industry in India. $170 billion of cash comes in. 6 million people are employed. $3 to $4 billion are paid on training people. No industry trains people like this. Please. I mean, you got to be sanguine, man. Don't make these loose remarks that, these are exploitative and all that. Okay, please. Now, let me explain to you, please. I need to explain to you,
raising the point that this gives us an opportunity, as you have said, for greater investment in high tech, in deep tech,
Rajdeep,
in AI.
let me explain.
Your point is taken. Have we made that leap?
You are not understanding, Rajdeep. There is the services model which use innovative products for enterprises. There is the product model where you need capital, you need deep markets, and the only product countries in the world are the United States and China, not Europe. Where are the products from Europe apart from SAP and small products? France has got Mistral, LLM model, which is just going nowhere, right? I mean, they're pouring money. No other country has got it. Japan doesn't have it. Japan is $4.5 trillion. We need capital for our startups and deep tech companies to grow and to scale up. We need local markets here which don't exist. We are a small $4 trillion economy. We are not the United States. We're not comparable to the United States. Despite that, we've done a great job in being one of the greatest countries for software services. And we can get into products. It'll take us 5-10 years. And you need $15-20 billion from LLM. Who is going to give money? Anybody going to give money here? There's no money in this country. Please. There's no money in this country.
I want quick 30 second. I want quick 30 second. I take your... Okay. 30-second reaction, Prabir and Shankar, very quickly. Do you believe that we are in a position, therefore, to create more jobs, those kind of highly skilled jobs, a model, as Mohandas Pai is saying, which will adjust to the new global realities?
Whatever the effort and whatever the time, I think directionally, yes, I think that's very important. But I see it a little differently, Rajdeep. I also think that the entire obsession may not be with IT, because IT consumed a lot of non-IT or non-computer science engineers. I think there are many other avenues that India is exploring. And to me, it is going to be, if you look at it as a macro issue, it will be about many other industries actually getting their share of talent, which itself will have a multiplier effect. So let's not only stay with IT as the panacea and the solution for economic challenges.
Well, Rajdeep.
Okay. Shankar, your final word. Very quickly.
I think we should stop smoking our own supply and getting high on it. We should examine the ground reality and work on what needs to be done. There must be ways. If DeepSeek could do with lesser capital than OpenAI, then India should be able to do stuff with lesser capital. That is all there is to entrepreneurship, technology, scientific innovation, whatever you call it. And the government should swear that in the next 10 years, it will not create any new hardship. And if they create, they will be held accountable. There should be maybe put an SIT in Supreme Court every time the kind of compliance and regulatory cholesterol is being imposed on entrepreneurship. This can't go on. It's unsustainable.
Okay, let's leave it there. It is, as I said, a challenging time, but every challenge provides opportunities. The question is whether India can seize this opportunity and perhaps transform some of the kind of economy that we have seen in recent times. And we'll wait and see whether that happens. Mohandas Pai, Shankar Iyer, Prabir Jha, appreciate you joining me here on the news today. I want to turn to there from what the Prime Minister has built is GST Utsav fortnight or times that we've entered in this festive season. Today was day one of GST 2.0 and several retailers, it appears, have cut their prices. The question is, of course, will this lead to a consumer boom? We decided to find out the mood on the ground. Take a look.
आज से देश में नेक्स्ट जनरेशन जीएसटी रिफॉर्म्स लागू हुए हैं। जीएसटी बचत उत्सव की शुरुआत हुई है।
The GST rationalization came into effect on Monday, the first day of Navratri festival. While it will take a few days to know how much of the benefits are passed on, the consumer will see the effect right away on daily use goods like dairy products. Mother dairy outlets have put up boards that show the price cut for specific items.
जीएसटी की दर कम होने से फायदा है कि आम आदमी को जो खर्चा बढ़ गया था, महंगाई बढ़ गई थी, अब वो महंगाई कम हो गई है, तो ज़रूरतों के सामान पे जो जीएसटी की रेट कम हुई है उससे आम आदमी को बहुत फायदा है।
मेरे ख्याल से तो बहुत अच्छी चीज़ है। काफ़ी चीज़ों पे जीएसटी हो रहा है और दूध दही तो ऐसी चीज़ है जो आई थिंक डेली यूज में लोग लेते ही हैं।
The garment sector could see increased consumer spending during the festival season.
कपड़े में कई चीज़ों में 12% से सब पे फ्लैट 5% आ गया है। उस चीज़ का बड़ा इम्प्लीमेंट है मार्केट में और आपका कस्टमर भी काफ़ी जब वेट कर रहे थे इस चीज़ का 8 दिन से बाजार में।
जी मतलब हर चीज़ में रेट गिरावट आ चुकी है और हम लोग भी पहले से ज़्यादा खरीदारी भी कर रहे हैं और हर चीज़ मतलब पसंद की मिल रही है।
क्योंकि पहले जीएसटी था ना तो थोड़ा सोच समझ के लेना पड़ता था, कॉस्टली लगती थी हर चीज़। अब क्या है, बचत भी होगी और साथ में शॉपिंग भी होगी।
Dealers of home appliances are also optimistic of higher sales.
एसी का बेसिक प्राइस होता है, उस पर 10% जीएसटी कम हो जाएगा।
अब उस पर कम हो चुका है। कम हो, तो लोगों की क्वेरीज आ रही हैं कि भाई हम आ रहे हैं खरीदने के लिए, जरा
अब तो नहीं, एक हफ्ता पहले ही आनी शुरू हो गई,
होना शुरू किया था, तो लोग आ रहे हैं अब खरीदारी
आ रहे हैं।
Most auto majors have announced price cuts. With GST on small cars and motorcycles down to 18%, dealers are expecting the sales to pick up after a lean month in August, when many had put off plans to buy cars in anticipation of a price cut.
Approximately 20 to 25% the inquiry will be increased compared to the last quarter of the year for small cars especially. So the inquiry will be increased.
The government says it will lose 48,000 crore rupees in revenue, but the boost in consumption will make up for the shortfall. But it will take a few months before we know how much the consumer will splurge. With Anaga Keshav, Ashutosh Mishra, Ravish Pal Singh and Anmol Bali, Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, let's turn from there to our exclusive of the day. Today, the Supreme Court issued a notice to the Delhi police asking for its opinion on the bail pleas of Umar Khalid, Sharjil Imam, Gulfisha Fatima, Miran Haider and Shifaur Rahman, all of whom are accused in the 2020 larger Delhi riots conspiracy case. Now remember, all of them have been in jail for more than 5 years and there is no sign of even the trial beginning. The notice has been issued by a 2-judge bench and posted for October 7th. It also leaves open the question, are we now in a judicial system where, particularly when it comes to UAPA and Prevention of Money Laundering Act, the entire basis of the legal system has changed. Now, it is increasingly difficult to get bail, even though a trial has not taken place for years. That's one of the questions that I posed to the former Chief Justice of India, Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, who's just come out with a book of his selected speeches. How do you explain the selectivity and arbitrariness in granting or not granting bail? Take a look at tonight's exclusive. Article 21, which guarantees the right to protection of life and liberty of all persons, and Article 32, which allows citizens to approach the court if their fundamental rights are being violated. The question then arises, this is there in the letter of the Constitution, but is the spirit being embraced? Because I specifically refer to laws that have been brought in by government, by Parliament, UAPA, PMLA, that make it very, very difficult for a citizen to be able to enforce his rights enshrined under Article 21 of the Constitution, right to life and liberty. The very nature of the law means that most courts deny bail at the very first instance, and you spend years in jail if you're arrested under UAPA or PMLA. So the difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of it, and therefore the heart and soul of the Constitution, is somewhere being eroded.
You know, one of the fundamental aspects of our law has been the presumption of innocence, that unless a person is proven to be guilty, that person is presumed to be innocent, which means, as Justice Krishna has said, bail must be the rule, jail must be the exception. Now, our laws, including some of the recent laws, have imposed very stringent requirements before bail can be granted. What can the judges do in a situation like that? The task of a judge is not an easy task. But one thing which judges can do, and which the Supreme Court has done, it began with a judgment by Justice Suryakant a year or 2 years ago, which is really a very significant judgment, is this, that if the trial is unlikely to conclude at a reasonably foreseeable future, then the right to a fair trial, which means an expeditious trial, cannot be denied. In other words, if the trial is not going to conclude earlier, then irrespective of the stringent requirements of that particular law, bail must be granted to that individual. Suppose there are 100 witnesses which are cited by an investigative agency. Now, those 100 witnesses are not going to be examined until, say, 5 years or 6 years or 7 years end. What if that person is eventually acquitted? That means that person would have spent 5 years in jail, though that person was eventually held to be innocent. So one way of enforcing the right to life under Article 21, which you have rightly highlighted, is to ensure that this is borne in mind by the courts. Namely,
yeah, go ahead.
Namely, that unless the investigative agency can be put to a temporal limit, that you're going to conclude the trial within, say, a year, or you're going to conclude the trial within a foreseeable period, bail should be granted.
You know, I don't know whether you know where I'm taking you to, but one of the contentious issues, based on exactly what you said just now, is the Umar Khalid case, which has attracted so much of media attention. He spent 5 years in jail. He and other activists arrested under UAPA for their alleged role in a conspiracy of the Delhi riots of 2020. Trial hasn't begun. The court says there are hundreds of witnesses who still have to be produced before the court. His continuing incarceration, isn't it against the spirit of Article 21?
Rajdeep, I've made my point clear on the issue of principle.
Yes.
And I believe that the principle which I have spoken about now as a citizen, not as a judge, must be applied across the board. On this particular case, the Supreme Court has seized off the issue next week. And merely because I have ceased to be a judge, I shouldn't become a citizen journalist and tell the Supreme Court what they should be doing next week.
But you're stating a principle. You're emphasizing the principle that if the investigating authorities cannot conclude a trial within a certain finite period, then bail must be the rule and jail the exception. Are we clear on that?
Absolutely. And subject to exceptions, which I said, which are well settled. These are not exceptions which I have devised right now in the course of the interview. These are exceptions which have been developed over the last 75 years in the course of our jurisprudence.
Because there is an element of selectivity also in this entire practice of bail not jail. Let me give you an example. When you were a judge, you gave, for example, a former colleague of mine, Arnab Goswami, you were heading a vacation bench at the time. You speedily granted him bail, rightly so, we believe, because he was, the manner in which he had been confined, I believe, was he had been wrongfully confined, and therefore you gave him bail speedily. Then you have a Siddiq Kapan, another journalist, lesser known, spends more than 2 years in jail and is not granted bail. And I can give you a number of cases where individuals who perhaps do not have the same access or are not VVIPs do not get bail instantly. So the entire law of bail seems to be dependent on selectivity and who the judge is. I hear from senior lawyers, if I go before a particular judge, I know I won't get bail. And there's been this talk that that's one of the reasons why adjournments are sought or you withdraw a particular case from a particular judge. Does that again trouble you? We are coming to the administration of justice, whether bail is also very selective.
You know, Rajdeep, let me make it very clear. So far as I'm concerned, and I've said this before, I granted bail to Mr. Arnab Goswami.
Yes.
But I also granted bail to Zubair.
Yes.
So therefore I said, well, I have granted bail from A to Z. And that was my own personal philosophy, that you must grant bail, particularly in a certain category of offences. Now, you've highlighted...
But you was missing. Yes. Umar Khalid, he didn't appear before you, but he may have gone before another judge.
I'll deal with that. Exactly what the point which you are making. I don't want to duck that issue. I want to respond to that. One of the issues which a lot of people have spoken about, say, our courts today, is that we are polycentric courts or polyvocal courts, not really polycentric, that's Lon Fuller's phrase. We are polyvocal courts. Now, what is meant by a polyvocal court? With the kind of volume of litigation which we have, say 80,000 cases, 70,000 cases being filed every year in the Supreme Court. No Supreme Court in the world, perhaps except for the Brazilian Supreme Court, deals with this kind of inflow of cases. Now, as a result, what happens is this. You have 34 judges in the Supreme Court. Obviously, all 34 can't sit down together and deal with one case, because then you wouldn't be dealing with cases. So we sit in batches of 2. We sit occasionally in batches of 3, but usually in batches of 2 judges. So you have 17 benches. Now, with 17 benches deciding cases, you're bound to have a polyvocal court where, personal predispositions of judges. In a very abstract sense, Rajdeep, it shouldn't make a difference as to which bench you go before. But you have to accept that, well, different judges have different predispositions, the way they think about our social life, the way they think about the law. When I was a lawyer, you would have judges who would be a little more, favorable to labor. Other judges felt that, our law had gone to the extreme in protecting the rights of labor and not protecting the rights of industry. So, you have different philosophies among judges. Should these be there? Should they not be there? The fact of the matter is you cannot avoid it.
And just a reminder that you can catch that entire interview with Justice Chandrachud, where he speaks on a variety of subjects, including the cash for door case that has caused such a stir, as well as sedition, free speech, and plenty more collegium system on our India Today YouTube channel. So look out for that on the India Today YouTube channel. Welcome back to the news today. Let's get to our Get Real India story. It's becoming one of India's worst nightmares. Now a 78-year-old former banker in South Delhi has been conned of rupees 23 crores in another digital arrest scam. It started with a call he received on August 4th by a woman who introduced herself as a senior official of a telecom company. In the end, he ended up losing all his hard-earned money. Take a look at tonight's Get Real India story on the growing menace of digital frauds.
A 78-year-old retired banker in South Delhi is the latest to be conned. A month-long ordeal that led to a fraud of 23 crore rupees in what could be country's biggest digital arrest scam.
एयरटेल हेडक्वार्टर से फ़ोन आता है मेरी लैंडलाइन पे कि हम एयरटेल से बोल रहे हैं और आपको हम मुंबई हेडक्वार्टर पुलिस के साथ संपर्क करा रहे हैं। घोटाला हुआ है, उसके तहत ये पैसा वहाँ से इस्तेमाल हुआ है टेरर फंडिंग और पुलवामा अटैक में आर्म्स और एमुनेशन खरीदने के लिए।
The woman on the call allegedly said he will be arrested under the NIA Act and his property will be seized. He was asked to provide bank details regarding fixed deposits, lockers and stocks. They even sent this former Delhi banker a fake arrest warrant and asked him to not say anything about this to anyone. Over a period of 1 month, between August 4 and September 4th, the fraudsters carried out 20 transactions and withdrew 23 crore rupees from Naresh Malhotra's multiple bank accounts.
पहले तो इन्होंने मेरे अकाउंट में जो बैलेंस था करीब 14 लाख वो निकाल लिया। मेरे से रोज हर 2 घंटे में मेरी रिपोर्टिंग लेते थे। उन्होंने बोला कि आपके बाहर हमने अपने वो इंटेलिजेंस के लोग बिठाए हुए हैं, आपका नंबर सीज्ड है, हमारे पास पूरी इंफॉर्मेशन है।
The police have registered an FIR and a probe is underway. Naresh Malhotra is one among many who has fallen prey to digital scamsters. With Arvind Ojha, Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's turn from that troubling story to something more happy. While several parts of the country are celebrating the beginning of Navratras from today, Kolkata is already in Durga Puja festive mood. And that's right. Across the city, various organizations are once again unveiling their traditional and unique pandal designs. While some are futuristic, others are eco-friendly, and many are based on social and recent themes. Each one of them exemplify what many believe is the true creative genius of the Bengali people. Tonight's Good News Today story is from the city of joy when it comes to Durga Puja.
Durga Puja, a festival of devotion and art, when streets across Kolkata see pandals coming up, each one different from the other. At the Mudyali Durga Utsav Committee Pandal, the idols are worshipped in a traditional manner every year. From offerings to various forms of worship, this committee performs grand rituals every year.
एक्चुअली मुदियाली क्लब में जो पंडाल होता है उसी में ही कुछ डिफरेंसेस या फिर कुछ नयापन लाते हैं हम लोग। तो इस बार हम लोगों का है आत्मशुद्धि बोलते हैं बंगाली में, जिसमें सेल्फ क्या बोलूं, शुद्धिकरण।
The pandal on Kashi Bose Lane offers delicacies brought from various parts of India to the deity. The theme of the pandal is simplicity, embodying the message of living simply and thinking simply. The pandals here are based on works of Bengali writers.
इस बार हम लोगों का थीम जो है उसका नाम है पागडोंडी, जो लेखिका है लीला मजूमदार, जो बंगाल का सबसे बड़ा लेखिका आप बोल सकते हैं फीमेल में। तो उनका जो ऑटोबायोग्राफी है उसके ऊपर हम लोग का इस बार काम किया है। उनका जो लिखने का स्टाइल है वो बहुत सिंपल है। आज का जो दुनिया पे ये सिंपलिसिटी बहुत कम हो गया है।
The Hathi Bagan Universal Durga Puja Pandal depicts the various Ganga Ghats of Kolkata. It conveys the history and memories associated with the ghats.
ये सब जो घाट है इनका भी एक बहुत बड़ा इतिहास है। हम लोगों का जो आर्टिस्ट है इस साल तापस दत्ता, उन्होंने पहले ये सोचा कि ये घाट के ऊपर काम करना चाहिए। अभी कलकत्ता का दुर्गा पूजा सार्वजनिक के ऊपर छोड़ के विश्वजनीन हुआ है, यूनिवर्सल हुआ है, यूनेस्को इनको एस्टेब्लिश किए हैं।
The pandals in central Kolkata's Santosh Mitra Square, once complete, will be a tribute to the armed forces. The theme here is Operation Sindoor.
As organizers fight against time to give last-minute touch to the spectacular artwork on display, their only prayer to Ma Durga is let rain gods not play spoil sport. With camera person Argo Ghosh, Anirban Sinaroy for India Today, Kolkata, where the spirit of Durga Puja is high and well.
Wonderful images there coming in from Kolkata, and our image tonight is also linked to the festivities. Remember, the 11-day Mysuru Dasara festivities have begun today, and they were inaugurated by International Booker Prize winner, also from Karnataka, Banu Mushtaq. Overriding all the political objections, she was there with Chief Minister Siddaramaiah to inaugurate the Mysuru Dasara festivities in Chamundeshwari. And that is our image tonight, and it shows that whichever way you look at it, India is truly unique and plural. May those plural traditions long continue and distinguish us from many of our neighbors and indeed from different parts of the world. Never forget the uniqueness of this great country called India. Have a great Navratra. Stay well, stay safe. Good night. Shubhratri. Jai Hind. Namaskar.